I grew up in a house with 5 older brothers, so let's just say it was a bit crazy. And while they're all great guys as adults, I can't imagine it would be easy if we were all working together right now. But that's what family businesses are about. So, how do they manage the rows, and in particular the big row about who's going to take over next? I'm Jonathan Healy, and this is Red Business.
The Red Business Podcast with CompuB, building your business with premium Apple solutions. CompuB.com.
Later on in this podcast, we're going to talk about Apple, not a family business, of course, but one that has introduced a lot of new exciting toys. We'll find out all about them and when people in Ireland will be able to get their hands on them. But first, let's talk about running the family business. With me in studio, I have 2 guests who I'll get to shortly. But ahead of that, let's go on a trip to Blackpool, down to Healy's Celebration Cakes. Nothing to do with me, just a business that happens to share my surname. The boss there is Rachael Healy. Rachael Healy, we are here in the back of the bakery. Tell me about that floor just outside there. Because that's not a modern floor.
No, they're old quarry slates. So they're over 100 years old. They were put in long ago, but they're actually great because they're non-slip. You know, you have to get non-slip stuff, so you actually don't even get the quality that they are anymore.
So a lot of bakers have walked on those particular tiles over the years. How old is the company?
Well, we're 156 years on this site, but I'm the 6th generation. So before here, we were in Shandon Street, and before that it was the Grand Parade, and before that it was Macroom, North Cork.
So you eventually moved into the Big Smoke and have stayed here ever since.
But we've moved out. This would have been Blackpool would have been considered outside of town when my great grandparents moved out here. So that would have been considered outside. You know, it wouldn't have been city centre. When they were in the Grand Parade, that was city centre, and then moving across to Shandon Street, which was nearly city centre, and then here.
What is it like to carry the weight of that on your shoulders, that you are the 6th generation of bakers putting forward the name?
I actually don't even think about it. I just fell into it. I was doing something else and came down here one Christmas, I think, to give Dad a hand, and I never left.
Just got stuck into it.
Yeah, I was between jobs and I just ended up staying here. But you say between jobs, you still had to come down every day after school and every Saturday to do your bit and clean a machine or, you know, wash this or, you know.
It's not an easy job being a baker,
No.
and I mean it in the nicest way. It's a dirty job because you're pulling bits of flour from under your nails,
Yeah.
I'd imagine, constantly.
And it's very physical. It's, you know, when you're lifting 25 kg bags of sugar, and it's not for the faint-hearted. A lot of people wouldn't be able to pull 10 bags of 25 kg bags of sugar around.
I'm sure not, and I suppose your dad did it before you. When you came in here, how easy was it to work as part of the family business? Because, you know, if you're working for someone else, they have to follow the P's and Q's. They have to make sure that they don't overstep the line. With family, it's a little different. How was the relationship with your dad?
There was no issues ever, actually at all. I'm one of 5, and we've all went into some form of food trade. My other sister is a baker up north. She's in Drogheda, County Louth, and they have a huge company up there. My brother is in bread distribution. I'm the only one, I'm going to say the Egypt, who fell in tow and never left, and that was about it.
And when you look at the business now, how much has it changed? Because you used to have the big bakery out the back here, and that's moved outside of the city now. Is it a constant evolution, and has it always been a constant evolution?
It is an evolution because food, diets have changed, etc. Bread was the main staple long ago. Like even when I was growing up, bread would have been the main staple. It would have been like, you know.
Bread with every meal.
Yeah, kind of a thing. Whereas now there's pasta and there's rice and, you know, everything else. You evolve, that's it. You just go with the flow and evolve. And that's why we ended up specialising in stuff, and people travel for that, and
It's a skill in many ways because it's celebration cakes is the sign above the door, and I'm conscious and I'm afraid to move because there's 3 what look like wedding cakes next to me here in case I bump off them. But there's not many people will do this level of baking, is there? Because when you're hardly, well, you might try and make a wedding cake, but you would be rather nervous doing it.
I suppose I can do it with my eyes closed. I'm used to it. I trained with my sister in South Bank Ballytech in London, and we went to Lucerne in Switzerland for a while, and we did a term there, and we did a term in France. You know, you get to, like what the Italian kids are here doing Erasmus now with me at the moment. So you just take some time off and you go off and learn some stuff other places. But we were the first people to bring this into the country. My sister was the first person to bring this into the country in I'm going to say maybe 80.
To bring
the icing of the
icing of the
celebration,
cake, really?
yeah, an Australian satin finish. It was called satin fondant at the time.
You know, people watch.
I know it's gone wholesale. Everybody has it.
Actually, they're not as good as yours, though. They're not as good as the Healy celebration cakes. When you do you watch Bake Off? I mean, is there a curiosity, or is that real busman's holiday for you if you're watching the Great British Bake Off? And do you look at it and kind of not turn your nose up at it, but say,
Oh, not
lads.
at all. I enjoy it. I'd still, to be honest, I just would look at it and go, yeah, grand, whatever, and switch off.
There's no magic in it for you.
No, there's not. I know the people are kind of interested in it, and it's kind of like I suppose, a fascination with that kind of stuff that's going on. Again, there's an American thing called Cake Boss that he was around for a while, and that, you know, yeah, you look at them, grand. Yeah.
You mentioned that you're one of 5. I'm sure there's grandchildren in the mix there. What happens next to this particular business?
They're a bit young yet. There's a couple of them might fall in tow, but I'd say it'll evolve again. If it's going to evolve again, it'll be something else again on the next generation. Because what I do is too physical and too hard. And I think, God bless the poor millennials, they won't be able for it.
Not good for lumping the bags of sugar around the place.
I think they might be a bit precious about stuff. But I don't know. Hopefully one of them will take an interest in it. Hopefully, if not 2.
Tell us the website for people who might want to look it up, because you have a website for these fabulous cakes.
Healy's celebrationcakes.ie.
Rachael Healy, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining us in Red Business.
Thank you very much indeed.
The Red Business Podcast with CompuB Business, improving productivity with the latest Apple technology. CompuB.com.
With me now in studio, continuing the conversation about family businesses and succession and all of that kind of thing, we've got Patrick Buckley, who is the MD of EPS Water. Patrick, you're very welcome.
Morning, Jonathan.
And Sean Carroll, who is a financial planning manager for AIB. How are you, Sean?
I'm very good, Jonathan. Good morning.
It's good to have you both here. Now, Rachael had cakes for me at the end. I'm guessing the best I could get off ye is maybe the offer of a loan and some water. That'd be about right?
Well, 2 North Corkmen, you wouldn't know what you'd get off it.
Right, yeah, probably nothing, but we'll move on. We'll move on quickly from that. Patrick, tell us a little bit about EPS Water. Because people will, I second I see the brand which is in front of you on some headed paper, I go, I know them, but I don't know how I know them or where they're from. So tell us about the company.
Yeah, well, the initial business was actually a business in Kanturk called Kanturk Electrical and Dairy Services, founded by Gerald Buckley and his friend John Joshian. And a number of years later, then they founded Electrical and Pump Services Limited in Kanturk. Gerald and his brother Paddy Buckley, and then they relocated to Mallow in about 1972-73. And were joined in around the same time by another brother and a sister who are currently the 4 shareholders.
So that's a family business, if ever there was a definition of a family business.
It is indeed, yeah. I suppose we're over 48 years in business now, and I suppose it is a family business, but people need to look at what is a family business. Okay, you have shareholders who are 3 brothers and a sister, and we've also had 1 non-family member who was a shareholder, and then when he retired, we remunerated his shares back into the business. But we've many families that work for us in terms of, like, within the business. We would have brothers that work with us. We would have cousins, first cousins, uncles and aunts. So whilst you have the Buckleys as the shareholders, the second generation are now involved. So there's 7 of us working in the business out of a total of 17.
How does that change the dynamic of a company? Because your traditional company, your non-family company, has people who aren't related to each other, number one, but don't know each other. intrinsically like a family would. So does it help or hinder the dynamic?
I think it definitely helps. My uncles and my father and the original first generation leadership of the company have been very fortunate to have excellent people who are non-family, non-shareholding, who have worked in the business and who have led the business in terms of certain business units and continue to do that today. We're very fortunate in terms of our transition from first to second generation, which happened over the period of 2009 to last summer, the end of 2016. And we have a good mix now on our board and management team of family members who are actively involved in working in the business, but also non-family who have essentially grown up in the business. They've been with us for over 20 years. So, it's a very good mix, and it's a good challenging, robust discussion at board meetings.
Good, robust board meetings are what life is all about, isn't it?
Yes.
The company itself is involved in water treatment, is it?
Water and wastewater treatment. So we've 5 distinct business areas in terms of what some people would know us for selling pumps and water treatment product for homes and farms and businesses, and other people would know us as a construction company. So essentially we design and build water and wastewater infrastructure for customers like Irish Water, Thames Water, Severn Trent Water. And we also do systems for industries like a lot of the breweries, the dairy companies and the biopharma industries across Ireland and across the UK. We will also work with, we have an asset management business which essentially looks after and manages those infrastructure assets for our clients. Product distribution business, a service repair business, which is essentially men and women in vans going around Ireland fixing motors and equipment on various facilities. And then we have a fabrication business, which is our latest investment in Mallow, over €4.5 million, which is all around design for manufacture and assembly and essentially build off-site and 3D design and digital engineering.
So your traditional mom and pop small family business then, from what you're describing.
Yeah, well, today we're over 80 million in turnover, 410 employees and growing significantly over the last 2 years as a result of various opportunities in the markets that have opened up for us.
And what did your dad make of all of this as the company grew? And I suppose, was it your uncle who was the
My uncle Paddy was the original shareholder with Gerald, and then their brother Tig and
so
my Aunt Betty, they were all involved and became shareholders then in the early days.
As they saw it growing, was it just concentration, focus? We know we're doing it right. Was there a sense at any time going, good God, this has gotten fierce big?
I think yes, you would have had. They made tremendous sacrifices to actually grow that business, and like people would often refer to some of the second generation as entrepreneurs, and I would reflect on that as we're not actually the entrepreneurs. The entrepreneurs were the people who started it and who grew it, both family and non-family people, in very difficult times. You had various recessions, you had interest rates at times over 20-25%, you had banking strikes, difficulties in getting access to cash to grow your business. So huge challenges. They were very conservative in their approach, but they were also good to take certain risks and make certain decisions that, in hindsight now looking back, were very, very good decisions to have made at the time. When you're in that part of the zone of the development of the business, it's difficult to see where it will end up. Like our pump business is a huge distribution business in Ireland now, but that started out as a well drilling business, actually physically going out drilling wells, and they made a decision to stop drilling wells, take one step back in the supply chain, and supply pumps to all of their competitors who were essentially well drillers. And they would be key partners and customers of us today now.
It's a lot less messy as well if you're not drilling the well. You're just providing the bump at the top of it.
It's still a very skillful and a tough task to do in terms of doing it right. But it was just a decision they took in terms of dealing with factories who make pumps rather than dealing with middlemen and distributors.
Sean Carroll from AIB. Sean, when you deal with these family businesses, I would imagine, notwithstanding the Buckleys and what's been going on at EPS Water, there can be challenges dealing with family businesses because families love each other, but they also hate each other. I mean, do you come across that very often?
You do. It does. Look, family business can be a very broad, I suppose, word. Like you can have the one man in his van to large company like the Buckleys, like EPS, and I suppose the larger companies, the politics can be a big thing. You can one part of the family can be very kind of one view, and the other part of the family can have another view, and that can create issues. I suppose what I always say to people when I meet them, irrespective of whether a large company or a small one-man his van company or partnership, what's your exit strategy? I know you're doing very well now, but what's your exit strategy? And an awful lot of them look at me as if I have two heads, saying, what do you mean? I'm here to talk to you about I'm 26 or 36 years of age. What are you talking about, exit? But it's all about the succession issue. How do you see yourself getting out.
Do you have to have the conversation that early? So the 26-year-old is going hell for leather, or the 36-year-old going hell for leather.
Yeah.
You have to start thinking that far back.
I really do think you do. You know, it has to be there. Now, it has to be one of the components in every chat you have on how you plan your business. Now, you still want to drive your business, and that has to be the core thing, driving your business and making it more successful. But if you think about it, Jonathan, succession planning is a process. And I suppose, unfortunately, what happens with lots of people, they arrive at 65 or 66 and say, hey, I have to get out of this. How do I do it? They can still do it, and there's still ways of doing it.
And many companies, and there have been high-profile ones, show that where succession planning isn't done or put off, all of a sudden things go wrong very quickly.
They can do. And I suppose what happens is a certain amount of succession planning happens, and it's well planned. Sometimes it just happens, an event happens. A member dies, somebody gets seriously ill. What happens to the company then? Do the next generation come in? Do the wife come in? Do the husband come in? And that can totally change the dynamics of the company, which can cause mayhem at times. It can work very well, but it can cause mayhem.
I remember being at a conference on this last year, and one of the things that really stood out for me was that there is mediators who do great jobs going in fixing or trying to fix a lot of these issues. And there was one individual. What happened was they went in and said, the company has gone, we're fighting, it's a disaster, don't know what we're doing, everything's going wrong. And they look back and say, well, what's changed in the last 12 months? And it could be something as simple as maybe there was a partner, a wife or a husband who had retired, and that what they were doing, they would have been moderating the excesses of somebody.
Right.
And without that moderation, all of a sudden the dynamic had changed and caused a huge problem. Is it important to kind of acknowledge that, even if you are that person who is the aggressor in that you realise, well, hang on a second, maybe there's a good reason for having such
Absolutely.
and such
I think the real important thing is that in any relationship, with business, personal, everybody brings something to the relationship, right? So in a family business or in a partnership, one person brings certain skills to that relationship. It could be their technical skill. It might be just a mediation skill. There could be middle ground inside a group of people. You take those out, that individual out of the scenario now, suddenly there's a big void. And I think that, like, one thing is providing the finances and the money and how do I work it, but the future of the company, what has worked well for us? What has worked well for the years? We've worked well because you're an expert in that, you're an expert in that. We've robust meetings, but we row in behind everybody else and we've a consensus afterwards.
How do you deal, Patrick, with maybe somebody wanting to do something and others not agreeing? Because that happens a lot of the time, that you'll have someone who says, well, look, I think this is going to work, and others might say, well, look, I don't share your confidence and therefore I don't want to proceed with it. And that can cause friction, can't it?
It can, but I suppose it's all about perspective. In particular, say, from my own position as a second generation member of the family, it's about perspective. So it's ensuring that, first of all, everyone is clear on where you ultimately want to go, having respect for everyone within the business as having a part to play in the process, and everyone, as you said, has a skill set or an area of expertise which all combined give you that trust going forward. Like, from my own experience, our mix on our current board, we have people who would be more conservative, we would be people that would be more risk averse, pushing forward, and it's that pull and drag that gives you, ultimately, in my view, that best decision to move the business forward. And I suppose the advantage of, depending on the structure of your family business in terms of your makeup of your management team or your board, it's the appetite for, okay, when you're going forward, making a decision, and rightly or wrongly then having the agility and the flexibility to go with it. And then if you know it's a wrong decision for whatever reason, having the decency and the cop on to make that decision to stop.
Well, to admit it.
Put your hands up, exactly, and pull back.
And in the case, Sean, of the smaller business, admitting that mistake can be hard. If you don't have the benefit of a board, if you don't have the benefit of a lot of people around you going, do you know what now? That hasn't worked out for you. Cut your losses and go back to doing what you were doing right. That can be a hard admission if you're on your own.
That can be very hard. And what you will find is in the larger companies there will be a consensus, right? In the smaller, one man, the man and his wife, or two partners that met in college and their techie business is going away nice. They're both, for one of those to admit that this is not the way to go, can almost be like defeat, right? And for some people, that's the biggest issue. They just need to stand up and say, actually, I was wrong. But that is very, very difficult. Very difficult.
Mediation is something I think that we're slowly coming around to the idea of in Ireland. I don't think it was acceptable to even consider mediation because, by God, I was right and you were wrong. So there's no need for mediation. But now people are coming around to it. And I think that organisations such as yours would be probably the first to advocate that.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And we'd be the first in AIB. Like when we come across a difficult situation, we would always say to the people, forget about the finances a while. That's just one aspect of this. Look at your company, look at your setup. Go and get mediation if that's going to sort it. If there is a logjam in this company, let's try and sort it out. And there's plenty of very, very good mediators out there. It's a growth industry, and there are people out there who are very, very good. But what you need,
who have a lot of patience.
We have a lot of patience.
Who need a lot of patience.
Who need a lot of patience. But the most important thing, Jonathan, you need all parties to come to the party.
Yeah, and if they at least get them through the door, there's a chance.
You have some chance.
Patrick, I suppose we have to be careful now because you're talking about the family here. But when you do have a row, because they happen. I mean, then you'll have a row at the kitchen table over something on the telly. You're bound to have a row over something that happens in the company. How do you deal with it as a collective group, as a family in business together? Is there a protocol that you follow, or is it just an understanding of how the others work?
Well, first and foremost, you need to ensure you have respect for each other, all right, and have that understanding that everyone will have a different perspective and a different view. Some will be more progressive in terms of expressing that. Others will be a little bit quieter. But I suppose it depends on your family business. It depends on the shareholding structure. And from my own perspective, it's 4 separate families. So I suppose if you look back at my uncles and my aunt, they all grew up in the same house. They all probably shared a bed at some stage. As we grow older, the second generation probably didn't share a bed. They had their own separate bathrooms. So, and then they're living in separate houses. And then we have 4 shareholders who live, 3 in Cork, in North Cork, 1 in the west of Ireland. And then even the second generation has moved. Some are in England, some are based in the Midlands, some are in the west of Ireland, and some are in North Cork. So it's ensuring that you have that communication all the time, ensuring that, okay, decisions have to be made, all right? Not everyone will be happy with them, but once they're made in the interest of the business, and most importantly, we have a responsibility to all of our employees and their families. So, like, we've hundreds of families that depend on the paycheck they get every week or every month.
And the success of the business.
And we have a supply chain, and so the business is bigger than any family member, and I think that's critical. Other businesses have obviously got into difficulties over the years because of certain practices as to how they approached what it meant for them as a family.
And do you have a succession plan? Is it in your? You don't have to tell me now, but just do you have a plan?
We do, but it's not a finalised plan. Like, we've just come through our first succession from generation 1 to 2. So we effectively have had.
It's gone well once.
It's gone not perfectly. We've had some difficulties and we've had some challenges as a result of it, and it's generally always the simple things that will trip you up. But we did have some good, excellent, sound, balanced external advice and support going through that in terms of our auditor and our retiring financial director, Liam Sheehan, based in Whitechurch. And Liam was always that calming influence in EPS during his years there. And we came through that process, and it lasted from 2009 to 2016. We now need to get into the next phase of that in terms of we have a third generation in terms of kids, young boys and girls that are ranging from 2 weeks old to probably 7 or 8.
I wouldn't give it to the 2 week old. No. There's an awful lot of responsibility.
But we have to ultimately decide. When we were growing up, we always worked in the business and there was no question about it. But if that portrays into the next generation, we potentially could have 35 or 40 kids working in a business which is not sustainable. So we have to have that conversation as to how do we deal and manage with that. And we would also have senior people in the business who also have kids who would like to have a job in the business where their parents are currently working.
What I'll say is it worked for the Fords, who still own their business, which I found fascinating when we had the Ford commemoration recently, that it's still a family-owned business and the man in charge is still called Ford. So it does work even through numerous generations. I have to mention the All-Ireland Family Business Roadshow, which is dealing with the S word, which makes it sound far more intimidating than it actually is. Navigating Succession in Family Business is at the Kingsley Hotel on Tuesday the 26th of September, and I think all the details are available on the website, which I think the Centre for Family Business are looking after. So
right.
Google that and you'll find it. And I know both of you will be in attendance. So Sean Carroll, Financial Planning Manager for AIB, and Patrick Buckley, MD of EPS Water. Thank you both very much for joining us on Red Business.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Jonathan.
The Red Business Podcast with CompuB. Apple technology and solutions for your business. CompuB.com.
So it was a really big week if you were an Apple fan, because Apple promised a load of new products that are going to come on and a new operating system, OS 11. And a lot of people are going to be looking for the iPhone 10, which is the latest product. Ciaran McCormack is the CEO of CompuB, which sponsors this podcast, but is a store that's got a lot of inquiries already. I'd imagine, Ciaran, it is the next big thing.
Yeah, it's a huge thing. I mean, there's a couple of pieces. They announced 3 different phones, 2 in the same category, known as iPhone 8, basically an iPhone 8 and a Plus, one is bigger. Then they announced the special 10-year anniversary phone, which is the iPhone 10, which is what they're classifying as edge-to-edge screen. And it's got
what does that mean now to the uninitiated?
The edge-to-edge screen basically means literally that the screen is going from one edge to another. There's no bezel going around the screen except for the very top part. And the very top part of the phone, they now have some special cameras. And this initiates a new feature on the iPhone 10 known as Face ID, which for those that sounds a bit strange, basically means facial recognition. And the logic of that is that when you pick up the phone and you look at it, it's going to unlock rather than putting in your PIN.
Effectively, it sees you.
Yeah, it sees you, but it's even a little bit more clever than that. It knows that you're looking. So what I mean by that is if someone thinks that they can be smart and put the phone up to your face and unlock it when you're not looking, it won't unlock. It only unlocks when you're looking at it. So it's a very smart facial detection technique for unlocking the phone.
It's come on a long way since the first iPhone, which is it's 10 years ago, hence why it's been called the iPhone 10. And consumers love it, don't they? I mean, you're going to have a lot of inquiries in the shop about this.
Yeah, we have loads of inquiries in our shops, particularly in our shops in Cork and in Limerick. And the reason for it is that it's not just the phone itself, it's the ecosystem. And when we say the ecosystem, it's that ease of use of the software that's been living on the phone for so long. And the reason people are staying with it is that when they started off with an iPhone 4, they know how to use it. And what's more interesting is you look around the corner these days and someone's grandmother's using it and some 3-year-old is using it. So in the old days when we looked at technology, we used to think you had to go for a degree to be able to turn the machine on. And that's why these phones have been so successful, particularly Apple's ones, is that the ecosystem, the software is so easy for them all to use. People are staying with the brand, and then of course they look beautiful and the technology is getting better, so that's why they're so keen to come back.
And more products, Apple products, are ending up in the strangest places. That they're now being used in restaurants, they're now being used in factories, they're being used all around the place. And, people's expectations are that they're going to keep being used, which is good news for someone like CompuB.
Yeah, it's great for CompuB. I mean, they've been used everywhere, from on the field to engineers to doctors. And there's a great example that Apple show with iPads, where a doctor can go up to a bed using a smart technology called iBeacon, and the iPad knows what customer or what patient is in the bed, pops up a photograph of that patient as they walk to the bed, and all of their data about that customer or patient is presented to the doctor on the iPad. So no charts. And it's smart enough, the iPad, to know from what bed it's going to. So the technology has been used in amazing ways, and that's why so many people are coming to our stores these days, is to buy the technology. It used to be for video, it used to be for games, but now a lot of them using it for blood pressure and monitoring their blood pressure because of a device that will connect to it.
Has very practical applications, and the watch, there's a new watch coming out, there's a new Apple TV. Everybody wants to know when they're going to be able to buy them. Are there dates yet?
Yeah, there are dates. The new iPhone 8 is available next week. The iPhone 10 will be available in mid-November. The Apple TV is available next week, and the Apple Watch Series 3 is also available next week, Friday of next week.
No word on the poor old Apple 9. Are we going to have to skip a generation, or there may be a 9 yet, will there?
It looks like 9 has been left off the list and the number doesn't exist anymore. So currently it's iPhone 8 and iPhone 10 is what's available.
A moment's silence for the iPhone 9. Okay, Ciaran McCormack of CompuB, thanks very much for joining us in Red Business.
Thank you very much.
My thanks to all my guests again this week, Anthony of Hennessy for helping put it all together. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, and we'll talk on the next one.
The Red Business Podcast with CompuB. Building your business with premium Apple solutions. CompuB.com.